Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick, and this is MSFS Flight Plans, a place where we accidentally learn about all kinds of fascinating places in our world as we attempt to accomplish our primary objective of making sure we never, and I mean never, run out of things to do in the sim. Today I'm going to say something I've never said before in our channel, and I might not ever utter it again. I am taking this flight just so you won't have to, and here's what I mean by that. We're about to fly over Pyongyang, the capital city of North Korea, and this is an interesting place to say the least, and significant enough geopolitically that it is absolutely worth checking out just to get a tiny sense of what's going on out here. But it does not look very good at all. It is at least as bad as most of China as far as the natural landscape goes, and most of the buildings are that AI autogen stuff. And if they aren't just totally flat or ridiculously misshapen. But I did buy a SamScene add-on pack for the city, and I paid $13 for it, and I honestly don't think we're going to get $13 worth of value out of it compared to what some of the other modders have pumped out for that price range. But in addition to the city where they put, I don't know, it said there was hundreds of landmarks they did, but I found, probably a dozen or so. But they also did this airport, which does look quite a bit better, I guess. So I'll let you guys decide if 13 bucks is worth it or not. But everything else, not real great. And even on the outskirts of the city, nothing was really touched up. So I'll let you guys tell me what you think of that. So why are we even out here if it looks so bad? Well, I think we'll all gain something useful from just getting to know this area a bit. And if you've ever been curious about seeing it and learning about it, well, once we're done with it, that itch will be scratched, and you can spend your precious sim time checking out some of our other flights that, in my opinion, are worth flying on your own. But if you just can't resist insulting the party with this ridiculous plane that we've got, and you want to fly the beautiful, beautiful Freedom Fox, I will include this flight plan in our video description so you can load it up, then pull it into a little NavMap, and then over into the sim. As you can see, of course, we are in the Freedom Fox. I put a little poll up on our community page asking everyone if they thought I should fly the Freedom Fox, and there was an overwhelming, resounding yes, but 2 of the people actually clicked the other box that I put on there. So it was like yes, 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 or other. So I'm not sure what they were wanting. Maybe a different type of plane, maybe not flying out here at all. I don't know. But most of the people wanted this plane, so that's what we're in, including Chet. What's up, Chet? Glad to have you back, as always. Chet's come along to get a bunch of stuff for his new MySpace page. He said he's trying to make it an eclectic blend of curated soft rock artist and dangerous flights over questionable airspace, so this will be a nice addition for that, I suppose. And we're going to fly at 2,000 feet for the whole trip once we get up there, because there's going to be a couple mountains, but none of them are going to be a problem at 2,000 feet, and we'll kick it on to autopilot once we get going. Let me just show you something real quick. This airport has 2 big strips. Let me zoom out a little bit. And this is the only one that you can actually select in the sim. All the parking is down at this one that we're at now, and even though I selected a parking spot, it stuck me at the end of this runway, so we'll just roll with it, do our thing, and that's what we're going to do. But just kind of be mindful of that. Very big airport. And there's a freeware add-on available. There's 4 of them available for this airport, and the one that I've installed that I've linked down in the description appeared to be the best of all of them, and it looked really good, actually. But because this airport was also part of that SamScene pack, I didn't want it to mess anything up, so I didn't add it, but I will include it in the video description. Alright, I don't want to miss our taxiway here, and I really can't see too well at that window, so let's just try to kind of eyeball this as we go through here. We're very close to the end. Oh, yeah. Okay, I think we're doing the right thing here. Yep, alright. So we are taking off from Pyongyang International Airport, Zulu Kilo Papa Yankee, and we're about 10 miles north of the city now. We're going to fly out away from the city a little bit because there's some info about it I want to tell you before we get there. But if you want to fly this exact flight, we're going to take a very special landing approach at a very special place that was requested by Chet, but I drew the flight plan to go back to another airport that's not too far from here if you want to land back at an airport. But if you're flying a bush plane like this, you may just want to try landing where we're going to land. We'll see. I haven't tried it yet, but we'll see if we can make it. Okay, how's everything looking? I've got the high-level cloud setting on, and it's about 11 a.m. I think in the morning. And another issue, I forgot about, how green the grass is, always by default. With the AccuSeason, which I've just been raving about lately now that I've got it to work again, they did give us the fall foliage, but amongst everything else, it's not going to look quite natural out here. The grass looks a little bit too green for this time of year, so you'll probably hardly notice that once you see how bad some of the other stuff is. Okay, we got everything good to go. CDI looks good. 1 notch of flaps. Get our landing lights on. And, of course, give her horn a honk. That was for you, Chet. Put that on your MySpace page. And yes, MySpace still exists. I had to look. It does. Chet's trying to start a revival. Social media revival. Yeah, this airport before didn't look great, and it didn't have any of the planes. I don't have any of the traffic turned on, ground traffic or anything, although I do have all the rest of my graphics settings turned up real high, which is nice after that Norway flight. So we'll see how that holds up. So these planes out here were part of the add-on pack, which is cool. Alright, flaps up. And then we'll turn the autopilot on once we get all the way down the end of the runway here. If we ever get there. And we'll just go ahead and turn the landing lights off. We don't want to draw any more attention to ourselves. I'm sure we'll hardly be noticed in this thing. Once you get a little higher in the air, the ground doesn't look quite as splotchy and bad as it is now. Some of the texturing on the ground actually looks pretty good. Obviously the colors look a little spray painted out there. When you get up over some of the mountains, there's bare spots where you can tell there should be trees. So just bracing you for all that. This is more of an educational tour. Again, just so you can scratch it off your list. And there's that other runway over there. See that? Alright, let's go ahead and set our altitude for 2,000. Then we'll turn on the autopilot. Oops, I've got the vertical speed turned on. Alright, 2,000. And kick it on. Nav. Alright. We're on our way. I don't think there was any other airports anywhere in North Korea in FlightSim.to, and I don't know if there was any of anything else other than this airport. But there were 4 of them for this airport. One seemed to be vastly superior to the others. So check that out if you feel like coming out here. So I'll tell you a very brief history about how this country arrived at the state that it's in today as we turn around and head downtown, because I think having that as a preface will add a little bit more color and context to everything else we're going to be talking about. And I've had a bit of a fascination with the country since reading a book called Nothing to Envy, and I think I got that maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And it was written by a female, I think she was a U.S. journalist, that was kind of detailing what life is like for the average citizen living under the thumb of the regime out here. And if you're curious about that, and if you haven't read it already, I'll highly encourage you to check it out for yourself. It was a fantastic read. I couldn't put it down. And very eye-opening. I mean, I knew it was kind of wild and crazy out here, but that just really laid it down. But the official name of this country is the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. However, it doesn't even pretend to be democratic or a republic. And apparently they were a little envious of the name selected by their arch-enemy and southern neighbor, so they stapled that D word to the front of their name when they opened up shop in 1948, so no one would make the dire mistake of confusing the two countries. And that line of thinking is roughly on par with pretty much everything that has emanated from North Korea over the last 75 years. A lot of pretending to be things that it is not. Yeah, from up here it doesn't look too bad. You can tell those are default buildings, but all in all, not too bad. The early history of this region goes back much further than I thought before I started checking it out for this flight. There's even a mythological element to it, which is far too complicated to get into here, but it's plenty of info about that available online. And they have an extremely long Wikipedia page for North Korea. By around 300 AD, the entire Korean peninsula, and even a good chunk of China, had coalesced into something called the Three Kingdoms, which spent a few hundred years fighting with various Chinese dynasties. And 676 AD marked the start of the North-South States period, with pretty much the entire peninsula being ruled by the southern faction, with the northern one controlling a massive portion of eastern China, and even up into Russia. And if you don't know where we are, of course I'll show you at the end when we get to the little nav map, but the Korean peninsula kind of hangs off the very northeastern part of China, just below the border with Russia. And for some reason I was thinking that was a little bit further south too, but maybe I was thinking of Vietnam. In 1936, the kingdoms were unified and advanced into their golden age of culture and innovation, which spanned the next several centuries until the Mongols rolled through and the whole area became a tributary state for another 100 years or so. And by the middle of the second millennia, tensions with Japan began to boil over as their island neighbor invaded unsuccessfully several times, kicking off what would become a very tenuous relationship between the two nations, which continues to this day. And after winning a string of massive regional conflicts, this is Japan we're talking about here, in the late 1800s, Japan forced Korea to become a protectorate in 1905 and then formally annexed it in 1910, after which a period of forced assimilation began, under which the Japanese attempted to completely extinguish the native culture out here. Let's see, I've got a 6-knot crosswind, but that's just with the default wind turned on. That seems a little bit stiff, but that's alright. Unsurprisingly, the Koreans weren't thrilled with all that, forming pockets of resistance fighters who would duke it out with the Japanese whenever they got the opportunity. And one of the resistance leaders was a guy named Kim Il-sung. You'll hear that name a lot on this flight. So after the defeat of Japan in World War II, the peninsula was surrendered to the Soviets, who controlled the northern end, and the U.S. maintained everything south of the 38th parallel. And the North remained mostly loyal to their new Russian overlords, due in no small part to the agreement to install Kim Il-sung as chairman of the Provisional People's Committee of North Korea in 1946. But things weren't going quite as smoothly in the South, however. That same year, civilian forces unsuccessfully rose up against the Allied government that was still in place, but kept the party going regardless as they declared themselves an independent state. South Korea did in 1948. And after that, the U.S., having bigger fish to fry with the Soviets and their growing nuclear threat, packed up their bags and rolled out. And once all the people with the big guns shoved off, Kim Il-sung made his ambitious move to invade the South in a bid to reunify the peninsula, kicking off the Korean War in June of 1950. I'm just trying to get my throttle dialed in now that we've leveled out. But the U.S. was watching very carefully all that going down and not wanting anyone involved with Russia to gain any additional ground. The Americans quickly returned to fend off the onslaught, helping out the South Koreans, resulting in one of the deadliest wars in human history on the scale of civilian deaths, with North Korea suffering the worst of it, losing roughly 15% of their population, and nearly 100% of their buildings and infrastructure were destroyed. Today there are two people most despised by the North Korean regime. Americans, of course, who are deemed an occupying force on their rightful land to the south, and the devils behind their virtual extinction during the war. And then Japan, who is apparently still not very well regarded by any Koreans. As things cooled down after the war, Kim Il-sung remained at the helm, developing into nearly a godlike savior figure, or at least that's what the government will tell you to believe if you live here. And you'd better say you believe it unless you would like a lifetime of imprisonment or re-education in one of the many prison camps throughout North Korea. I tried to find some stats on just how many people they've got locked up down there, but the information is a bit dicey, as you can imagine. By some accounts, they may even incarcerate more than the U.S., which is not an easy feat to attain, with perhaps as many as 800 per 100,000 civilians. But if the lower estimates are accurate, which they're probably not, it could be closer to 600 per 100,000, in which case the U.S. would still edge them out by just a hair. After Kim died in 1994, his far less attractive son Kim Jong-il took over. You may remember that guy, with his beautiful glasses. And his remarkably well-fed son grabbed the reins when old Pops died in 2011. So once we get out here, the two things that may really stick out to you is the feigned opulence of the country. If you were just dropped into Pyongyang and didn't know any better, you might assume this place is a first-world oasis of culture and wealth and innovation. But in reality, nearly half the country is starving to death, and the only innovation is finding new ways to gain compliance from the population. And whatever wealth exists belongs to the highest echelon of the party members and government officials. And when we're done, I'll take you on a quick satellite image tour so you can check out some of the places the well-connected are living in, none of which, unfortunately, rendered correctly in the sim. The other false impression you might get is that this is a very patriotic society. They've got more monuments and museums and nationalist icons than you can shake a stick at down here. But again, the reality is that the only people who at least act like they love the regime are the ones who also enjoy not being dead or imprisoned. Alright, so there's the town over there. We're going to take a right-hand turn in just a minute. I'm trying to get lined up to see the first of our sites. And I didn't take a flight out here before I installed that pack from SamScene, so I don't know how much of this would have just been default stuff, but I'm betting quite a few of the bigger structures would have been, because everything else out here certainly is. Yeah, from here that doesn't look too bad though, does it? Little farms and stuff. And again, if you didn't know what it really looked like on the ground, you might not think anything of it. There'll be a few spots that obviously look just way, way out of place, but around here, that doesn't look too bad. Not too bad at all. Getting some good pictures, Chet? Yep. Cool. See those right angles on those rivers up there? That doesn't look quite right. But again, you know, we're going to get what we're going to get out here. But out this side looks good. Alright, we're going to turn right here in just a second, and we're going to see a little open strip out of our left-hand window with buildings running along the sides of it, and I can only find info on one of those buildings. I'm just telling you about it before we get there so we can take a good gander at it. And that one is a science museum. It's going to be at the end of the little open strip, but judging by the arrangement around that central lawn that's going to be the open area running in between them all, I think they might all be museums, or at least were. because there's a chance they might also all be abandoned. Which is also very hard to determine because, as you'll see from the satellite images at the end, once we zoom into these, to any part of the city, you'll notice that there are no cars in any of the parking lots anywhere, and no people walking around anywhere. I mean, we can get enough resolution, even in a little NavMap, that, and the shadows from the satellite image are long enough that you would see people walking around. It looks like a ghost town everywhere. You can see some traffic in some parts of the city, but mostly nothing. But the roofs of these places that we're about to see in real life look pretty dilapidated, so I think they may have shut those down, which leads me to another speculation. There are lots of sites like that out here, very large structures that were obviously once something very ornate and significant that are now totally abandoned. So my hypothesis with that is that it's kind of like what the ancient Egyptians did, where each subsequent dynasty would try to outdo the last one with newer and larger structures, leaving the older stuff to just rot away to history. So that may be what's going on out here. I'll show you a few different spots that look like that. And then they got some big, grand, obviously brand new spots too. Alright, we're about to see the little strip that I think is museums. Alright, let's see if we can spot it out here. So this is it up here, and you can tell this is a big garden out in the middle here, and none of these look like that in real life. I mean, the footprints are probably about right, but some of these have domes on them. And this one here is the only one that had any kind of place mark or information about it, and it said it was a science museum. And they had some pictures that look kind of current, but when you see the roofs of all these buildings, they all look really old and rusted out, like they're about to cave in. And then right out here, which also doesn't really look much like that in real life, is an area called the Social Safety City. And other than the name, I couldn't find any information about that either, but we could probably make a few educated guesses about what goes on down there. And in the off chance that a defector happens to stumble across this video, please feel free to help us fill in the blanks with any of this stuff. Yeah, you can see that looks a little wavy there. This is all just big gardens here. And then this building here has a dome on it, and I think this one has a dome on it as well. Alright, this gigantic building right up here, this big pyramid triangle-shaped thing, is the Ryugyong Hotel. And they started building that in 1987. And no one is sure if they'll ever be able to finish it. As you can imagine, they keep running into money problems out here, because they've got some palatial residences to build. Hotels come second to that. But what's currently standing out here, which you'll see in just a second once we're around that, once the pillar gets out of the way, is the tallest structure in the country, topping out at 1,080 feet. And it looks pretty cool. I guess the most recent thing they've done is at least put windows on it, but look at that thing. I mean, that is massive. And this little dome right here to the left is the Pyongyang Arena, which they did manage to open in 2003. And this white thing here to the left of the arena, which kind of stretches out this way, the complex for that, is called the Fatherland Liberation War Victory Memorial, which is dedicated to the nation's resounding victory in the Korean War, which you'd better agree was the conclusion of that conflict, if you ever want to see your family again. And if you go down there today, you can enjoy looking at a whole host of wrecked or captured American military equipment like tanks and planes. I said they had a big stack of U.S. military helmets. And even the USS Pueblo, parked right down here by the water, which I'm not sure we'll be able to see. But it's out of the water. It's actually parked on dry land right next to it, which that's really their trophy. They love having that thing all proudly displayed as artifacts of the complete and utter annihilation suffered by the Americans during the war. And this thing here, this little triangular shaped thing that kind of looks like a party hat, that's their ice skating rink, which has been in operation since 1982. And there's something we're going to see to the left of it here when we come around in just a second, and I have no idea what it is because there were no markers on it whatsoever. It's going to be to the left of this place, but it looks kind of fancy, a lot fancier than the rest of these default buildings. So I don't know what it is, but I'll show it to you once we come around here. Looks like an old palace of some kind. And there was a structure on this which had a Korean name to it, and when I clicked on it, it pulled me up to a list of Korean prisons, so it may be an abandoned prison that's on that island. You can't see any structures there now, but from the satellite map you can see there's still something down there. Here's that other thing. We'll get a little bit closer here in a minute. Look how big this is, and it really looks like an old school Korean-style building once you see it with angles all over it. Obviously an add-on, because it really sticks out, but I don't know what that is, and Google didn't tell me anything about it. So we're going to circle down this way, come back up along the river, and then check out the other side of town, and then we'll come in for our special landing spot. Probably only be about another 20 minutes tops in the air. This big, nasty, dirty, beautiful thing right here is the Pyongyang thermal power plant. And they don't have nearly enough of those things in this country. I read that only 26% of the nation has access to electricity, with most of what is available being diverted to their manufacturing facilities. And if you've ever looked at an image of the whole peninsula at night, like a satellite image, you'll notice just one tiny speck of light in all of North Korea. And that is where we are right now. And this place here is coal-powered. There's a big coal heap on this side of the river, which we're going to fly over, so we probably won't get a good look at it. But apparently they've been trying to build some hydroelectric plants, which is probably going about as well as that big hotel back there. But that's definitely been touched up, because that looks really good. And over on this side, they have a bunch of parks and stuff down here. I flew out over there. There was some cool stuff to see out here on the satellite images, but none of that got touched up, so I'll just show you that stuff at the end because it's worth checking out for sure. But it's just going to look like the rest of this stuff if we fly out there. All the good stuff's over here. Alright. This river that we're following right now is called the Potong. This one right beneath us, and that's a tributary of the Taedong, which is this big one that runs right through the center of downtown, which will start falling north here in just a few minutes once we take this turn. And this one here, the Taedong, is the second longest river in the country. It's at 272 miles. And it was really the backbone, I read, of the earliest populations out here, with sites that have been discovered going all the way back to 3,000 to 4,000 BC, which would have been the Neolithic period. Alright, we're about to fly over Suk Island, which is this thing right here. And down on the tip, this big structure here, we're going to feast our eyes on this. Once we get over, you'll see it's kind of, I think they were trying to make it atom-shaped. And that's the Pyongyang Sci-Tech Complex, and that was opened in 2015. And it is the only place where well-behaved citizens can get on the Kwangmyong network, which is the state-controlled internet connection. And it appears you can get on at least 1,000 different websites in that place, many of which detail the complete and utter annihilation of the Americans during the war. All government approved. And outside of the internet thing, from what I read, it doesn't appear there's anything else going on down there. Man, can you imagine how many minders they've got on staff in a place like that? Talk about having someone look over your shoulder. I think that's pretty much standard operating procedure out here, especially if you're a foreigner visiting, if you can even get in. But that actually looks really good. That's very well detailed, and it looks very, very accurate, so that's pretty cool. Oh, they even have a rocket out there in front of it? I didn't notice that before. That looks fantastic. All just to get on the internet. See how vacant these roads look? That's really what they look like. And in the end, I'll show you. I mean, even out here where people would be walking around, I don't know where they'd park out there. I think like mass transit's a big deal out here, so maybe people just don't have cars. You will see some buses once we look at the satellite map. But there's no people anywhere. Obviously they're in the buses, but nobody's walking around anywhere. At least not without their minders. Alright, this next island up here is called Yanggak. And, man, that pillar is right in the middle of everything we're trying to look at. This big brown oval-shaped thing here, in the middle of it is a decaying stadium that was built in 1989, but it's been vacant for the last 6 years, at least. And this tall building up on the point over here is the Yanggak-do International Hotel, and it must be part of the scenery pack because it really does look like that, and it's going to look good when we get next to it, too. And they say it's classed as a luxury hotel, the only one in the country unless they managed to finish that big pyramid place. And obviously they did not do... That stadium has really low walls anyway, but that was just a zero-effort job right there. And it really is that rusted out and decaying. They've just torn everything out of it. So other than being flat and just draped over the hills there, that's about what it looks like. And this thing, which is between the dilapidated stadium... Well, maybe it does have a little elevation. Maybe the shadow's just making it look that way. This is the International Cinema Hall. And it looks a lot cooler than that in real life because there's some stuff built up on the top of it. And I have no idea when it was built because the Wikipedia page held just one sentence. But fortunately that one line introduced me to the Pyongyang International Film Festival, where you can enjoy titles such as the 1992 blockbuster Glory of Our People in Holding the Great Leader in High Esteem. I didn't make that up. It was listed on the festival's webpage, which I'm sure you can't even access down here. Alright, we're going to take another left-hand turn here in just a second. We'll get a nice look down at what I guess we could call the equivalent of their national mall. But they call it Kim Jong-il Square. And it's on the other side. The big part of it's on the other side of the river. You'll see it here in just a second, but it extends over to this side of the river, ending at a big monument called the Juche Tower. And Juche is the official name of the ideology of the Workers' Party of North Korea, which happens to be the only party. So there's the tower right there. And when you look across the river down this way, you'll see the big square, which is the third largest in the world. I read. But when you're having as many parades and rallies as they have out here, you better have a big one. And that bridge looks really good too. Look at that thing. Man, that looks fantastic. Alright, I may go back on my griping about the price I paid for this. But this thing was completed in 1982, this big tower here. And there's an elevator that goes up to top, and they have a big flame. It's not a real flame, but something that looks like the flame at the top of it there. And at 567 feet high, it's the second tallest monument column in the world, after the San Jacinto Monument in Houston, which is 9 feet taller. And I'm going to guess that fact is not something made available at the SciTech Center. Alright, so there's the big square. And this giant building at the other end of it here, which also looks beautiful, is the Great People's Study House. They opened that in 1982, billing it the Center for the Project of Intellectualizing the Whole of Society and a Sanctuary of Learning for the Entire People. Look at that place. It says it can hold up to 30 million books, and is currently filled to less than 3% of that capacity, and most of that is comprised of documents expounding the benefits of party ideologies, and of course, details of the complete and utter destruction of America during the war. Okay, back on this side, this little thing right here, which is not little at all, is the massive monument to the founding of the party, and that was completed in 1995, and within it we'll see the 160-foot-tall hammer, sickle, and calligraphy brush. And those are meant to honor the boundless work ethic and loyalty of the local workers, farmers, and intellectuals. And just one block closer to the river, right over here, that's the Grand Theater, which opened in 1989 and is recognized the world over for its epic performances celebrating the country's dictators and their achievements. Alright, over here we see the massive Run Grotto Stadium. And that thing's the second largest in the world by seating capacity, holding up to 114,000 guests. Currently, when it was built, it could hold 150,000. And they built that in '89 purely out of spite that Seoul was awarded the 1988 Summer Olympics. And the biggest thing to ever happen down there on a global scale was the 13th World Festival of Youth and Students in 1989. God, that thing's huge. Look at that. But the city spent several years planning and building for that event, which even included 100 American students, which is shocking. The slogan for the festival was "For Anti-Imperialist Society, Peace and Friendship," a sentiment enforced with strict boundaries on movement and outside communication with locals. Alright, this next place is really cool. It's going to be right down here. I'll make a big square of everything I'm about to be talking about. This is the ruins of the Pyongyang Folk Park. And this was a big amusement park that after 4 years of construction opened to the public in 2012. And the place, as you can see, was just massive. And none of these buildings are really here. I don't know why this isn't put buildings there, but all of this is flat now. But it turns out it took a lot of electricity to run a huge theme park, so they closed that place down after just 4 years of fun and folklore. And shortly after closure, Kim Jong-un had it demolished because it reminded him of his uncle, Jang Sung-taek, who he had executed in 2013. And the state media reported that that guy was killed by firing squad, but some leaked reports give an alternate account that he was stripped naked and eaten alive by a pack of ravenous dogs. And there's also been a few reports that some of the former officials were executed with anti-aircraft cannons, which I guess if I had a choice, I'd probably take that over the dogs. Alright, this thing out here, which didn't render just right, is the National Martyrs Cemetery. And that's up on top of that hill, which is called Mount Taesong. And it's dedicated to the soldiers who fought for independence from Japan. And some sites called it the Revolutionary Martyrs Cemetery, so I'm not sure which is actually correct. And I can only find one picture of that place, but it looks like each headstone has a big bronze bust of whoever's buried there, which is kind of cool. And as we come along the top of this mountain and get ready for our approach, if you look down to the right side of the hill, they got a big zoo on the pathway leading up to the cemetery. And on the left side of that pathway, going down the mountain, is where the botanical gardens are. So here's the zoo, which doesn't look all that great. The botanical gardens out here, which you really can't see at all. We'll check all that out at the end. And then running through here is an amusement park. So they kept that one up. It's much, much smaller than the other place. But you really can't. And most of their amusement parks consist of like a Ferris wheel and a merry-go-round. And they've got several of them out here, so I'll show you all those too. All of this stuff here is supposed to be very low-lying greenhouses. The first time I flew over that, I was like, what the heck is that? But they rendered them all as apartment buildings just stacked on top of each other. But that's an area called the Vegetable Growing Research Area or something like that, where my guess is that they're researching growing vegetables. Oh, you know what? This is where the amusement park is here. It's down in the little valley there between them. That's where the current amusement park is. And you can see a tiny little roller coaster and a couple of different rides from the satellite map. I don't see anything like that here, but we'll check it out at the end. And I think there may be some more stuff on this side over here too. But that place is pretty neat. See if you can spot the one picture for that. All of these things here are just rows of those big bronze busts of whoever's buried there inside of each of those. Alright, now for the highlight of our trip, we're going to try to land on a road in front of the Kim Il-sung Palace of the Sun, which is where the preserved remains of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il are on display. And when it was built in 1976, it was called the Kim Il-sung Assembly Hall and was used as the personal residence by Kim Il-sung. And after he died, it was converted to a mausoleum to the tune of roughly $1 billion US. And once we get closer, you'll see they even added a big portrait of Kim Il-sung out front. But today there's actually two portraits, the other one being Kim Jong-il. And if we're not close enough to see it, we'll hop out and fly the drone over there. Alright, so I'm going to try to land. This is it right here. And there's a road stretching right down in front of it, so I'm going to try to land on that. I want to have at least a little reverence and not land on the front lawn. But not too much reverence. Alright, autopilot off. So you wait till you get a load of these greenhouses. That was a fail in all capital letters. And then right over here is the Pyongyang University campus, which I think is also called Kim Il-sung University. Alright, there's our road that I'm going to try to come in at right there. We'll see if we can do it. And be sure to stick around for... We're going to have an extra cool satellite image tour on this one, because again, most of the really detailed stuff that you'll want to check out is on that. Stuff we couldn't see here. So just a final thought as we come in. You guys know I like to have a good time on all of our flights, and I hope I can keep it lively enough to make it entertaining. But all kidding aside, life out here has been a total nightmare for most of the residents for quite a while. Really since the Korean War. And I can totally understand why they would hate Americans. And though the story they're getting about how it all went down is probably not even remotely accurate, if any of us were living out there under this regime, I'm sure we'd think the same way. Look at these. They were supposed to be greenhouses. But my hope is that by exploring all these amazing places around the planet, our perception of the vastness of the world would get a little bit smaller as we do it. And through all these adventures of ours, maybe we'll all get a little bit better at recognizing that despite all of our different cultures and traditions and politics, at the end of the day, we all just want the same thing. Just want to love and take care of our friends and families and try to live the best lives we can with the circumstances we've been dealt. Alright, I don't want to lose track of where I'm going here. Alright, I got to come down some more. So we'll just go ahead and get all of our flaps out. Cut the throttle. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see a residential complex like that out here. But that is not what that looks like. Look at all that brown smoke just getting pumped out of these power plants. But because there's so few motor vehicles out here, I bet they really don't have any smog problems. I mean, I guess even landing where I am is a bit sacrosanct, but we're not going to be... And in real life, as you'll see, this is all a really ornate garden out here. It's not a big cement pad like it looks there. And there's that little portrait. We'll go get a better look at that. But they said that's quite a spectacle to see the inside of that place. They got big statues of those guys. They got their embalmed bodies in there that you can look at. But apparently it's not real easy to get in there. Bunch of little rooms on the side with some of their personal effects. Well, I wasn't thinking about that mountain being there because I didn't notice it before, so we'll have to clear that. But this plane can stop on a dime, so that shouldn't be an issue. Look how big that stadium is. That is ridiculous. Man. I think they said they put like 1 or 2 years worth of GDP into building that just to spite South Korea for getting the Olympics. That's just perfect. So when we're done, I'll show you some really, really cool archaeological sites, and I want to show you some of the residences where some of these government officials live. And I wish we could get a better look at where the common populace lives so you could kind of compare it. I guess we could see some spots that look like that, but some of these places that the bigwigs are living in, quite impressive. And if you're visiting, if you're a foreign dignitary visiting, they have a little guest house right over here somewhere which did not render at all. There was literally nothing there in the sim, but I'll show you that too. I think Mike Pompeo may have stayed out there last time he was in. You know, Dennis Rodman just stayed right at the little guy's house. Didn't have to stay in a dang guest house. Alright, just gotta clear those trees and not stall. I want to get a little closer so we can get a look at that portrait. Let's get over this little roundabout. Well, from here the trees look nice. They even kind of match the slightly browned out grass. Alright. Down we go. Alright, I'll turn sideways up here so we can try to spot that portrait without driving off the end of the road. Which may be easier said than done. Alright, full back pressure so I can get the brakes going. Flaps up. Let me see if I can look up over this. Oh, that doesn't help too much, does it? Get that pointer around there. There we go. I can see it that way. Alright, let's just stop here. Oh, here we go. We're going to come downhill. Look at that. So they got two portraits up there now. The other one being Kim Jong-il. Okay. Parking brake on. Get her shut down. I left the start power on, but that's okay. Everything is running just fine. Well, what'd you think? Did you get enough material? You can fly yourself back out later if you didn't like it. Alright, so as always, here's where we are in the world. So here's China out here, massive, and it really doesn't go that much further up here. Russia actually starts kind of in this region over here, and then here's Japan, right across the water from it. And South Korea starts... Seoul is pretty close to with the border, so that looks like it's probably around this region right here, so that's probably where the demilitarized zone is. And again, if you haven't checked out that nighttime satellite map, just look at it. It's just, well, there's a line here and a line here marking out the boundaries of the country. Totally dark except for one tiny little speck right here. Alright, so let's talk about the stuff we did look at real quick, and then I'll show you all the other ancillary stuff, which is really, really cool. So there's where we took off from. Again, it's going to start you for whatever reason. Even though I picked this parking spot, it's just going to start you right here. So unless you just want to take off there, you'll have to drive over to a parking spot. And of course that means the engine will be started too, since you'll be on the runway. Alright, so here's where I think those museums were. And you see what I'm talking about with all the rotting roofs and stuff? And the only one that had a marker on it was that said it was a science museum. And their newer buildings, obviously they've taken better care of. So that is the safety community right there. The social safety community. Whatever goes on with that, I do not know. But it probably isn't great. In a lot of these towns, it's kind of like in Russia where they have the... the propaganda centers in each town, and a lot of them will have a big square like this in the town, and then two statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il that'll be in there. You'll see a lot of that kind of stuff too. This was not in there at all. There wasn't even a dirt spot or anything for the Fatherland Liberation War Memorial. So that's not something you could see at all when you came through there. All right, let's get to the stuff that was done up in the sim. The first was the big hotel. There that is right there. And you can tell from that shadow that place is massive. And here's where the marker for the prison was. You can see there's not much down there, so I don't know what's going on with that. There's the Pyongyang Arena, and then here's the Victorious Fatherland Liberation War Memorial, and there is the USS Pueblo parked right there. And you got to check out some pictures of that on the ground. They just have like rooms and rooms full of wrecked U.S. military equipment. It's just incredible. Then we came down here to check out the power plant. I just put question marks on it because I didn't know what it was called. That was my reminder to check it out. These stadiums over here, couldn't see any of that. It was totally flat. Came around here to the SciTech complex where you can hop on the internet and check out one of their 1,000 sites. And this was another memorial of some kind honoring the deer leader, but that didn't show up in the sim either. Alright, we came over here, and here's that stadium that was all browned out on the top. And you can see it's not real high as it is, so that wasn't too far off, but obviously it was flat because it was just drooping across the landscape. And then here's the International Cinema Hall. And the sides of it were right in the sim because it had all these little spikes on it, but it didn't get into the elevation right. And then here's that big luxury hotel there. And then we come along this way. Okay, there's the ice rink that looked like the party hat. And there was that other building that I could not find out what it was, but it was done up in the sim. Look at that place. Pretty cool. Here's the Juche Tower. Don't even mention that one out in Texas. Kim Il-sung Square. And then there's the Grand People's Study House with their dozens and dozens of books in it. Look at that place. Unbelievable. They said it's like 1.1 million square feet under there. That is crazy. And if we move a little further over, we see some more museums, assembly halls, theaters, another spot with the two big statues on it. You can see them right there. This is called the, what is that, Mansudae Hill Grand Monument here. And since we didn't get a good look at it, I didn't research it too much, but there's their statues. And then here is the hammer, sickle, and the calligraphy brush. I'm not sure which is which, but that looked really good in the sim, actually. And then there's the Grand Theater. And here's a little water park that did not render very well in the sim, but it looks really good here. Look at that place. But, unfortunately, not a soul down there. Look at that. Crazy. Okay, then we came out here, and here's where the Pyongyang Folk Park was. And you can see there is nothing there now. They tore every single thing down in there. Botanical Garden here, and here's what does exist as far as amusement parks. So they got one wimpy-looking little roller coaster here, nothing like what they had out at Cedar Point. And then just a bunch of basic, very basic carnival rides, it looks like, stretching out this way. But without any electricity, I don't know how you run any of them at all. And then here's the Revolutionary Martyrs Cemetery, and let's see if we can... Yeah, see each of those little dots there, if you have a bigger screen, you can probably see it. Each one of these things is a big bust of whoever's buried in there. And this must be the really important people up here. But that probably looks pretty cool in real life, I would think. Here's their zoo out here. And then here's where all those greenhouses are. And you can tell those are not apartment complexes. That's where they're doing their vegetable growing research. And then we came in for our landing in this beautifully ornate area here. Down by the burial place of the deer leaders. But look at that. Those gardens look gorgeous. They didn't look like that in the sim at all. It was just a big concrete pad. All right, so to some of the ancillary stuff, I even took some notes on it because it's worth mentioning. All right, this first one down here is the tomb of King Tongmyang. And this is the place of the site of at least 15 known graves. Let me get even closer so you can get a good look at it. And the most significant of which is the king who is the founder of the northernmost of the three kingdoms I mentioned right at the start of the flight. And that guy died in 19 BC. But they didn't build this place until... Oh, let's take the centering off. Sorry about that. They didn't build this place until much, much later. I think it was around 500, 600 AD when they built it. So I guess they took whatever was left of his body from where it was initially and then threw it down there. That's pretty cool. And there's another one up here, and then we'll jump back down to the... Well, while we're here, let's just look at this. This is one of the residences for some of the leaders out here, and I'll show you Kim Jong-il, whatever the current guy's name is, Kim Jong-un. I'll show you his place in a minute. But look at that. It's good to know people out here. He's buried right next to the king. Or his house is right next to the king. All right, this is the granddaddy out here. This one is called the Tomb of Tangun. And it's a lot like King David's tomb up in Jerusalem. It is the purported site of the burial of Tangun, who was the legendary, if not mythological, founder of the first Korean kingdom almost 5,000 years ago. But like King David, archaeologists are having a tough time finding anything that confirmed the guy was a real historical figure, outside from just the legends about him. But they did find the bones of a man and woman buried down there, which turned out to be about 5,000 years old. So that's something. And the South Koreans were very keen to take a look at those because they're highly skeptical, but of course they're not letting anybody take a look at them, so we don't even know if they really found them or not, but they said they did. And this was built in 1994, and on the ground it just looks so cool. It's like a giant step pyramid. Really, really cool. So check that out. And here's the airport I have you coming into if you want to go up there and land next to it. None of the rest of the stuff out here looks very good from the sim, but I did want to show you another residence up here. Look at this neighborhood. Looks like something you'd find in the ritzy part of Jacksonville. Look at these houses. And I guess they're big on water gardens out here, huh? Look at all those. Unbelievable. Look at that place. Okay, so let's check out something. Here's another little town that's up here that's called Pyongyang. And the only reason I want to show you this is to show you that they also have their own little square in the middle of town with a Revolutionary History Hall, including the two little statues. They got them up there too. Pretty much every town has those. All right, so here's another palace here. Look at that place. And that's not the main guy's palace, but that must be an important person. And they got another one out here. That one looks a little run down, though. They probably shot that guy with an anti-aircraft cannon. And here is where the current deer leader lives. Ryongsong residence. And his looks kind of small compared to some of the others. Boy, everybody better watch out. Or cut half their place down. Look at that, though. Unbelievable. And let's see. Let's get to this side of town real quick, because there was some other interesting stuff out here. There's that stadium that looked... You could tell it was a stadium, but totally flat. Out here is Kim Il-sung's birthplace. They made a big park out of all this here. It's called, what is the name of this park? Myeongdongdae Forest Park. And they got a big amusement park out here. And the Revolutionary Museum, which probably has something to do with Kim Il-sung's birthplace, which is right there. Got a couple high schools out there. And they have a lot of places that are called the children's this or that. Children's traffic park, children's camps, children's all kinds of stuff. So either they really, really, really want to take care of the children out here, or they really, really, really want to indoctrinate them as soon as possible. And I'd say it's probably the latter. But look at this place. It's called the School Children's Place. Unbelievable. Children's traffic park. I don't know what they do out there. Teach them how to drive the buses, I guess. And out here is the National Gifts Exhibition House. And I don't know what goes in there because I couldn't find anything about it. And over here is the Hyongdong-dae Children's Camp, which looks like it has a pretty big structure of some kind down there. Look at that thing. But I mean, if you think about it, it's a pretty good system. So most of the kids probably can barely get any food to eat, and the parents are probably just dying for them to do something fun. So the government comes in and says, hey, we'll give them a good time. We'll feed them and indoctrinate them. We'll take them to the camps for a little while. So that's it. Did I miss anything? They got a big horse racing place down there. Another big mansion down here. Let's look at that one while we're here. Why not? Look at that. Good grief. It's just amazing considering that most of this country can barely even afford food. 26% of it is all that gets any kind of electricity. And they got some people living in places like that. Insane. All right, so that's it. That's Pyongyang, guys. Now you've seen it. When you're hearing about the stuff going on, and when you're doing the rocket launches, there's a complex out here where they're doing most of that stuff. It's not anywhere near Pyongyang, but I had to check that out too. I didn't look at it on the map, so I don't know what it looks like, but that's somewhere out there if you're ever wondering where that is. But you should see, there's a couple video tours of stuff on the ground out in Pyongyang. You should check those out. It's a very, very interesting place. Probably a lot like Nazi Germany was at the very height of the stuff in World War II, as far as all the propaganda and stuff goes. I just find that really fascinating that there's places in the world that still exist like that. So that's it. Had an absolute blast as always. Can't wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.